And I think one of the most interesting questions that just came up to me was on the topic of space mining. What exactly are states mining from space? And is there any regulatory framework that covers mining in space? What are states mining from space now? And what is the existing legal framework on space mining?
I'm happy to start off with that. Space mining was very controversial and it remains very controversial. Essentially, I'm not a scientist, but I'll just paraphrase what I know or succinctly. Space mining is basically mining certain celestial bodies such as asteroids for their mineral content, whether it be water or nickel, mining it. And apparently there is hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of minerals on near-Earth asteroids. And if some company or some nation is able to figure out a way of doing it successfully and effectively and economically, they are going to reap the rewards if the stance taken by the United States is any sign to go by. Now, if we go back to the Outer Space Treaty, as Dr. Yao mentioned, outer space is supposed to be used for the benefit and advantage of all nations. It is not subject to appropriation, which means no country or their entities should be able to go there and say, I own this asteroid, or I got here first, and therefore everything here is all mine. There is no method currently in place to share that wealth that is up there. But if we look at the United States, they have passed domestic legislation, which they're entitled to do within their jurisdiction, which basically says that any private entity that is able to mine in outer space, they are entitled to whatever it is they find. And previously, I think it was the chief executive of the United States National Space Council, Scott Pace, he has said very, very clearly that outer space is not a global commons and that it is not a public good. And that is the approach that the US is taking, which is completely contrary to how space has historically been viewed.
Thank you. Any other contributions from our other panelists?
Yes, if I may add on this, this is completely true. And Luxembourg has done exactly the same thing. That's what I mentioned. And saying exactly the same as the United States. For me, it's appalling to see that this kind of, because I believe this is contrary to the treaties, and especially the Outer Space Treaty. But you can see that these states have started this discussion. And it is also a key element because, as you know, the next stage of the space exploration will be the creation on the moon of what is called a moon village, the idea being there to extract from the moon soil certain elements and to create hydrogen so that you can move to Mars, etc. And I think the ideas of these countries are just to favor ventures that would be able to, or investors to invest money, go there and develop certain projects. And to do this, of course, they need certainty on the property. This is a huge international issue that will need to be solved.
Yes, it is. I also believe it's a matter of balancing the interests of the different states, but in line with the treaty obligation. You have to consider that these states that are for mining, they are willing to go and use their money to go and explore that. And normally, in a normal business sense, the amount of money and effort that you put into something, you have to reap the benefits. So now you have to balance that with developing states or states that don't participate in the venture, who would say, because this is a risk community, we also have to share. But then we haven't contributed anything. So it seems unfair to those that have taken the initiative So we have to have laws that enable exploration and enable healthy competition, but at the same time that take care of the needs of those that are still developing, those that can't take part, maybe in a way that these ones that are not taking part can benefit from scientific information, can benefit from learning from the other, can have skills from these developed ones in their venture. So in that way, then we balance this issue. But to say we stop them from mining, in a practical sense, it's not fair. It will not be fair. But at the same time, we have to take the interest of the developing countries at the same time. That's my view.
If I may just add on this, because I share this view, but it's just a way of handling the issue, because it's true that we need to manage the, I wouldn't say the conflicts, but the diverging issues, and especially the fact that if you invest money, you need to get a reward. But if you look at the Moot Treaty, for instance, which has been ratified by very few countries, it's true. There is a mention that there should be an additional treaty or an additional agreement to manage these issues, and maybe that's something that would need to be addressed globally, and not just by one country saying, okay, this is the way I want to do it. It should be a global discussion. Very difficult, because I don't think it will be easy to find a way or at least a common agreement, but at least we should have this discussion. That's my view, and I find it a bit difficult to accept that certain countries just say, okay, this is the way I see it, and this is the way I want to do it.
Okay, so thank you very much for that discussion. I think another question that flows directly from this issue of the economic benefits that come from the investments, right? That some, I guess, the space leaders have already put into this sector is, what are the potential legal implications if African states fail to develop comprehensive regulatory regimes for this sector, right? Because at this point in time, the bus has moved, and some of us are still, standing at the bus stop, but we still want to get to the destination. So what are the implications for us if we don't actively get involved?
Firstly, I would say just the economic benefits of space are enormous. And if we don't get on board, as developing countries, we are already having issues with our economy. And this is an opportunity that is coming to us, being given to us, that if we take part in it, then we can improve our lives, and improve the lives of our people. I think if we are given an opportunity like this, we take it with both hands. And if we don't do it now, then we'll have a lot to answer to the future generation.
I would second that. I do, if you don't mind, I would like to go back to something that was said earlier. I think we have to be careful about framing, particular being the African Air and Space Law Association. It's obviously painfully clear that the space powers are not on the African continent, but we have to acknowledge the achievements and the contributions that we have made. And I don't think it's accurate to say that we've not contributed anything. I think that's too strong of a statement. I mean, we have people like Professor Francis Alate, whose Alate formalism was crucial and absolutely vital for NASA, for some of the achievements that NASA made. Unfortunately, we didn't have the infrastructure and the framework on the continent for that achievement to be here, but nevertheless, it's the achievement of an African space brain. So I think we really need to be careful of framing, especially when we're trying to think about encouraging and supporting young entrepreneurs, space scientists, space lawyers to getting involved in this area.
Thank you for that insight. There's a follow-up question based on the fact that some of you have only focused on specific countries, right? So there's a follow-up question saying, does anyone here have any information what is happening in other African states, right? For instance, Julia, you focused on Ghana. We've heard about what's happening in South Africa, but are there any additional pieces of information you can share about what is happening in the legal space sector on the continent?
I can touch on Rwanda, for example. Rwanda recently established a space agency, and that space agency is responsible for representing the Rwandese government at international fora relating to the formulation of space policies and standards and laws. It has launched 2 satellites. Both have been in partnership with foreign entities. One was in partnership with the Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, and the other was in partnership with a private company some of you may be familiar with, OneWeb. It also, in terms of the legal aspect, it became a member of COPUIS, the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, which is a UN body. It became a member of COPUIS back in 2019. So we should see Rwanda making more of an impact, or at least being present and contributing to the formulation of space laws and policies. And they have plans to use space activities for things like environmental and natural resource management. As far as I'm aware, they also do not have a specific comprehensive domestic space law other than that establishing their space agency. But I'm sure that's probably in the pipeline, because they did get their domestic legislation done relatively quickly.
That's great. Any other countries or states in Africa that you are aware of which are making some strides in the legal space sector?
Obviously, there is a number of them. I wouldn't say specifically what they are doing, but I know that Nigeria is almost at par with South Africa. We also have Kenya. Morocco is also in space. And we already having the space agency going to Egypt, right? Yes, so yeah, a number of African countries are involved in space. It's just that at this point, I wouldn't say how far, as a matter of fact.
I think just to highlight something Icho said, and she's absolutely right, is that there's a problem with public awareness. I think the governments of African nations, they all quite clearly accept that, space is necessary for national and regional socioeconomic development. That has been clearly accepted. The issue is funding and implementation, and some countries like South Africa and Nigeria are ahead of the game compared to others. But since they have recognized the benefits to be achieved through the utilization of space commercially, I think it's just a matter of time that we get some more domestic legislation. And I'm told, it's a rumor, I haven't seen any documentation, but I'm told that Ghana is working on a draft act, and they do have a draft. It's not been made public, but again, I've not seen it, and I cannot verify the accuracy of the rumor.
Thank you very much.
I remember in my presentation, I did talk about maybe a body that could be focusing on space policy and helping countries develop their